Senior Moments, sponsored by the Empowering Seniors Group on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Senior Moment Show. My name is Bryce Patton, and I'm here with my co-host, Sid Roeder. How are you, Sid?
Good morning, Bryce. I'm doing fantabulous. How about you?
Fantabulous? That is wonderful.
Yeah.
That just made my day.
Good. I'm glad it did.
Good. Well, I'm excited for our guest, someone special that you know very, very, very well.
That is true.
But before we dive into that, do you want to talk to us about our sponsors?
I will. Our sponsor is the Empowering Seniors Group, a group of professionals that has dedicated their time and effort to provide information to seniors, their family members, and everyone who is interested. We do so via this radio show. If you'd like to learn more about the Empowering Seniors Group, you can do so online at empoweringseniors.info, or you can email us at empoweringseniors.cv@gmail.com, and the CV stands for Cache Valley. And lastly, if you have any suggestions for this show, anyone you would like to see us invite, you can call me personally at 435-512-6406.
Thanks for doing that. Like always, I'm glad I don't do that part. Okay. Do you want to introduce our guest?
Of course I can. We have a lovely young lady here today. Her name is Jackie Jones, and she happens to be my daughter. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, Mom.
This is fantastic. And she is an AEMT and firefighter. We can dive into that a little bit more, but she came and volunteered her time to be with us today and talk about some things that also have an effect on seniors, and some behind-the-scenes information on how dispatch works and what to do when.
That's awesome. Did she do you justice?
Yeah, she definitely did. Mom introduces me great every time.
All right, great. Okay, I'm super curious. What is AEMT?
Yeah, so AEMT stands for Advanced EMT, and EMT is Emergency Medical Technician. So in most states, there's 3 classifications. There's an EMT, or a basic EMT, and then an advanced EMT, which is what my certification currently is, and then you also have a paramedic, which most people know what a paramedic is.
Okay, awesome. All right, my biggest question, this happens to me all the time, because I have little kids that think calling 911 is funny, and it's not. But will you tell me kind of what goes on when someone calls 911 and they get dispatch or whatever, and they're asking all these questions, like what's going on with all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that the dispatchers I work with ask is 911, where is your emergency? And that's the biggest thing is with 911, with our dispatchers, they want to get your location so they can immediately send out either police or EMS and fire. Because they want to get people on the road, at least with the dispatch we work with, they want to get people on the road, and they'll code it as a Zulu response, which means it's technically unclassified, but we're just getting units out in case it's a bigger emergency than we actually think it is, or than from the information. So what they'll do is they'll say 911, what's your emergency in most cases, and then they'll ask for the address you have, the name of the person that is calling, and then also what type of emergency. They might ask, like, what happened? And you can say, like, my grandma fell, or I found someone on the side of the road and they're bleeding from their head. So they're asking all these questions because they're filling out a Q card in their system at dispatch to kind of catalog that call and see what they're sending out. Because if it's something like my grandma fell and she's not waking up, she's not breathing, then they're going to send out EMS versus police in the first case. With the dispatch I work with, they usually send a police officer with every EMS call we go on to. And again, it's at the police officer's discretion if he's going to go into the house and make contact with the patient, but they usually meet us on scene. So the questions they ask are leading up to how they classify a call and how and when they send out people and what resources they need to send out to you.
That actually reminds me a little scenario when I was at your fire station and everybody was running to their trucks respectively and we're driving out, and then one all of a sudden started backing up again and they got out of their vehicle. So I guess that's what you were just explaining, where they're sending out and then there comes a clarification. They're realizing, oh, I guess we don't need one part of the rescue that we're sending.
Right, absolutely. So in that case, we had an ambulance and a ladder truck going out, and we also have a medic unit, which is a paramedic rig that goes on, is just specialized for paramedic calls. So they'll go on what we call Charlie and Delta responses, which are the two most severe responses we have in our dispatch system. So what happened was as it was a Zulu response, we all ran out because medics were paged for a Zulu response because it sounded more serious than it was. Clarification was given, dispatch filtered that information to us, and all of a sudden medics were like, oh, this is not a medic level call, which doesn't mean that we can't call them back if something happens, but they decided, it's not a medic level call. They canceled the medic unit and they came back to the station.
Now, when someone calls 911, I threaten this with my kids, and I say, hey, they're going to get charged money for this because my kids think it's funny to hop on my phone and try and call dispatch. Yeah. But is that actually the case for making the first phone call?
So no, at least with the department I work in the county, they do not charge you for being on scene. The things that we charge for is transport time and any resources needed. And the way we clarify that is, for example, if someone's having like a diabetic issue, like their insulin pump kind of malfunction, or they gave too much insulin, we don't charge them for the equipment we use on scene. And that is because we're giving a resource, and we understand that, ambulance transport is expensive. Average transport in Utah is about $3,500 for just an ambulance transport, which, for some people is not a great, bill to have at the end of the day. So we don't charge for, medical scenarios or situations that are on scene. Once we transport, that's when we, start the bill.
So let me ask you this then. What are some reasons you want to call 911?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a whole plethora of reasons you'd want to call. For example, the biggest one is if you find someone who is not breathing or doesn't have a pulse. That is your biggest one. That is could be an indication of a cardiac arrest. If they're pulseless, most definitely it's a cardiac arrest. But if you have someone who's in respiratory arrest, the likelihood of them going into a cardiac arrest is very high. So if you have someone who's not breathing, not talking to you, doesn't have a pulse, always call 911. If you have someone who is injured severely, like bleeding, limb, or maybe fingers missing, that's always something you want to call. If you have an elderly patient who has fallen or is not acting right, like if you go visit your grandma or your grandpa and you recognize that they're not speaking the way they are, they're slurring their speech, or they're just not behaving kind of what we call it on a baseline of what they usually are, that's a very big indication that something's going on. So you want to call them, you want to call 911 for that. And then again, you also have car crashes. You always want to call for a car crash. We hope that you probably stop if it's safe for you to stop and just go and see what's going on instead of just calling and passing by. That's really helpful for us. But car crashes, any medical things, if there's someone who is super sick in your home and not getting better, that is also a reason you can call 911.
Are there any things that you get a phone call about and they shouldn't be sending? Or should, on the general rule of thumb, should you call 911 in doubt,
Yeah, I mean, for us, because it is an emergency system, we would rather you always call with doubt and be like, I don't know if I should have called, and us show up and it be nothing, than us not being called and something happening. I mean, again, there's this big joke, like in the fire service, that we went on this call and it was nothing, or someone stubbed their toe and they called 911. But in reality, we always want you to call. We always want you to call because we'd rather be there and say nothing's going on than something really happen and us not respond and something, someone dying. That's like the worst case scenario.
That's perfect. We're already coming up on our first break, and I'm trying to think of a really short question I could ask you, and I can't think of one. So I'm just going to maybe end this segment a little bit earlier, but I do want to refer to our sponsor again, which is the Empowering Seniors Group. If you'd like to learn more about Empowering Seniors, you can do so online at empoweringseniors.info, or you can email us at empoweringseniorscv@gmail.com. And again, the CV stands for Cache Valley. And lastly, if you have any questions, any suggestions for us, you can reach me personally at 435-512-6406. We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Did you know 1 in 3 people will visit a nursing home? Did you know that once there, they will stay there for an average of 3 years? Did you also know there are insurance options that can help cover this experience? Hi, I'm Tracy Ferris with Blue Water Health Insurance. It's not cheap to stay in a full-fledged nursing home. Long-term care insurance can help you or a loved one get the care they need and deserve. If you wait until you need it, you may be too late. Give me a call at 435-890-8155.
Hi, this is James Stevens with White Pine Funeral Services. At White Pine, we value compassion, integrity, and service. We are committed to serving you and treating your family as our family. We will be here when you need us most, to listen, to help, and to provide exactly what your circumstances require. At White Pine, we promise to dedicate our time and attention to you and your family. We invite you to come by and meet us. We're confident you'll feel a difference.
Did you know that one of the greatest threats to our quality of life is a fall? 1/3 of Americans 65 and older, and 1/2 of those over 80 will fall this year. Many will never be the same again, and some will never return to their homes. This is Bruce at Comfort Care. One of the ways we can help people stay in their home is through our free in-home fall protection survey. Let us help you identify these fall risks. Call us at 754-7676. Comfort Care, 754-7676.
And welcome back to the Senior Moment Show. My name is Bryce, and I'm here with Sid and her daughter Jackie, and she's been explaining to us some of the things with 911 and with the EMT and all that fun stuff. But you had mentioned, Jackie, earlier about if you find a senior that's not acting right, like what symptoms are we looking for there?
Yeah, so you can look for a lot of different symptoms. The biggest one that we look for is slurred speech and behavior that is very not normal for your senior. For example, someone who is usually very friendly and happy and an outgoing senior, all of a sudden being very aggressive and very almost backhanded, those can be symptoms of a stroke that could be happening.
Okay.
Wow. So in those cases, then you call 911. And what other symptoms could there be other than slurred speech? I mean, do you see? I remember there's droopy lips and stuff that you can see.
Yeah, so we actually have several different kind of tests that we use in the fire service and the EMS that we can kind of determine if someone's having a stroke. The one that we use is called the Cincinnati scale, and we actually look for 3 simple things. So the first thing is slurred speech. If someone is usually very eloquent and talks very precisely, and all of a sudden they're slurring all of their words or they're kind of mumbling, that's one of the biggest ones. The second one is you can have your senior smile, so have them say, "Take a big smile for me, show me your teeth," and if one or either side of their face is kind of drooping, that is a big one. That's also an indication for a stroke. And the third one, this is a little bit hard to describe, but just take your arms, put them straight out in front of you with your palms up, and then close your eyes. If you're not having a stroke, most of the time, because again, these are not perfect indicators for a stroke, but they're really good indicators. If you put your arms in front of you, palms up, and close your eyes, your hands will usually stay in the same place. But if you're having a stroke, you can have it where one of your hands will actually drift down towards your legs or to the floor, and that is a big indication of a stroke. So those are the 3 symptoms, or the 3 tests we do, which is the smile. You want to do a smile test to see if there's drooping of the face. You want to do a speech test to see if there's slurred speech or mumbling. And then you want to do an arm drift test is what it's called.
Okay, so that's the stroke. But what about a heart attack? We run into people with heart attacks and heart issues as well. What are some signs and symptoms that we look for a heart attack?
Yeah, absolutely. So heart attack symptoms are actually different, and I think a lot of people have heard this, are different for males and females. So for males, it's very common to have like arm pain and like radiating pain down to your like hand, and a lot of like chest pain is what we describe it. And the difference between like chest pain and like breathing pain is like when the person that's having a heart attack breathes in and out, there is no change of pain level, and that's a big indication where you can see if this is like a breathing issue where they're having problems with like their respiratory system versus a cardiac issue. So when they're breathing in, there is no change in pain level. Then also there's like tightness of their chest, or you feel like someone's sitting on your chest, or you feel like there's tightness in your arm. Those are the big symptoms for males. For females, it's a little bit different because females react differently. And a lot of that is contributed to, well, women are under stress a lot, so they might not recognize the symptoms of a heart attack, especially elderly women or women who have had kids or are very busy and have, all these things that they worry about. So for them, symptoms can look like wanting to, like feeling nauseous, feeling like they need to throw up, feeling weak. And again, those symptoms can be interchangeable, but we generally see like the heaviness on the chest more with males than with females, not saying they can't be interchangeable.
Wow, that's interesting. A lot of information. So we've talked about heart attack and stroke, is there any other things that would be testable or easy to at least get an idea if 911 is necessary?
Absolutely. So a big thing is falls. I mean, how many times do you hear someone talking about, oh, like my grandma fell, my grandpa fell, my uncle fell, but with elderly patients, a fall can be very detrimental because either what is the cause of the fall? Did they trip and fall and now we're having a medical issue, or was it they're having a medical issue and that is why they fell? So that's a big one you want to look for is with falls. Don't kind of downplay them. Is a big thing we see. They're like, oh, I just fell. And it's like, well, no, why did you fall? Did you trip and something happened? Or did you trip and you're fine? Or did something happen and that's because you're tripping? So I would say look for, if someone has fallen, look for obvious bleeding, obvious injuries. Like if they have broken arms or wrists or anything like that, that's the biggest one you want to rule out and control any bleeding if there is any major bleeding. And then kind of do like an assessment, say, hey, like, can you say something? Can you say like the sun sets in Cincinnati is the big one I like to use, and like do a stroke scale, and then just like gauge what their baseline is, because baseline is how a person acts on day to day, and if they're off of baseline, that means there's something that they're not doing or doing that is not normal for them.
Okay, so if I were to come up on someone and I didn't know their baseline, are there any tips or tactics to figure out kind of what would be baseline for them?
So the biggest one we use is family and bystanders. So if you have someone and you're rolling up on scene when you're arriving on scene, and you see someone and you say, oh, there's nobody here, there's absolutely nobody here, you can actually ask them, say, if they're coherent enough to talk to you, and say, hey, do you normally have slurred speech, or do you normally have like right-sided weakness? Because you can have patients that have had a stroke before or have other medical conditions that make them either right or left-sided weakness, can cause that. So you can ask them and say, hey, do you usually have slurred speech, or you're usually weak on this side? So you can always use the patient. Just because they're having a medical issue doesn't mean they're not a valuable resource. And again, family members is the biggest one. If you have a family member there and you can say, hey, do they have a history of stroke? Like, have they had a heart attack before? Is this how they're usually behaving? And then a lot of time, like if you're on a scene and there's just bystanders there, you can say, hey, what were they acting like before this happened? That's a big one.
So I've got a question for you, because you were talking about the 911 calls and the dispatch. I can imagine that a lot of times people are frantic and very upset because something is going on. Do you have any tips from you or dispatch how to calm somebody in the situation to be able to assess what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest one is always trying to be calm yourself, because if you can control your kind of energy of like how you're reacting to the situation, then you can try and help people feel calm. So what we give people is, before you call 911, take a deep breath. Just remember, like, you're calling for an emergency. It's okay to slow down. It's okay to give your time and talk to dispatch. So the biggest one would be comfort the person, be there for them. If they're absolutely frantic and you can't calm them down, we've had situations like that where we have arrived on scene and someone is just freaking out of their mind, understandably, because something crazy happened to them. But just try to calm them and let them know, hey, I'm here for you. I'm not leaving. EMS is on their way, or police is on their way, and just try to help them calm down. Have them take deep breaths. Have them think about like describing something on scene. If they're freaking out, say like, hey, count the fingers on your right hand, which sounds very silly, but in the moment can help with de-stressing someone.
Yeah, that's a wonderful tip, because I can imagine sometimes the family is so upset that it's hard for them to make sense and even to respond to the questions they get asked with calling 911. Yeah. We're already coming up on our second break here, so let me mention our sponsor again, which is the Empowering Seniors Group. If you'd like to learn more about the Empowering Seniors, you can do so online at empoweringseniors.info, or you can email us at empoweringseniorscv@gmail.com, and the CV stands for Cache Valley. We're going to take a short break. When we'll come back with Jackie Jones, who is helping us out learning things about emergencies. We'll be right back.
In today's world, we often think it's cheaper to order through the mail, right? In the case of prescriptions, that's not always true. Reed's Pharmacy in Hiram, your locally owned Health Mart pharmacy, is often less expensive than mail order plans. Plus, you can talk to the pharmacist in person or on the phone. Who better to help navigate the confusing world of medicine than the pharmacists at Reed's Pharmacy in Hiram? Reed's trained pharmacists will help you navigate the maze of healthcare. Call 245-DRUG for more information. Health Mart, caring for you and about you.
You have a lot of options when it comes to buying or selling a home. Do you list it online, sell it yourself, or do you have a realtor help? It's a major financial and emotional decision. A realtor is the liaison between buyers and sellers and really helps you navigate complex contracts, deadlines, and disclosures.
Hi, this is Sid Roeder with Achievement Realty.
I work for you to get the best outcome for your situation. Let me earn your trust with a free consultation and a free market analysis. Call me today at 512-6406. Then list it, sell it, and move on.
At Maple Springs Senior Living in North Logan, we understand that entrusting the care of your loved one to someone else is a decision not taken lightly. That's why we go above and beyond to create a nurturing environment where your family becomes our family.
When I found Maple Springs, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. The staff here really cares, and Mom is thriving.
The activities and social events have brought so much joy to Dad's life. I can see a positive change every time I visit.
We know that your loved one's well-being is your top priority, and it's ours too. Learn more at maplesprings.living.com.
And welcome back to our Senior Moments show. My name is Bryce Patton, and with Sid Roeder, we're actually talking with your lovely daughter, Jackie. Jackie, thanks again for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this has been awesome. We've been learning a lot. I realized that guys don't stress like women, and so that's why we react differently to heart attacks. I'm just so glad I'm so fancy-free and lovely. Hey, but we were talking about falls and different things. Can you kind of go into preventative measures that someone might have in their home to help keep them safe?
Absolutely. The biggest one that we see with seniors is just keeping walkways clear. I know that sounds very silly and a simple thing to do, but keeping the areas that they kind of commute through in their home clear is a big one, because if they're going to the fridge and there's something in the way, for example, if they're on oxygen and they have an home oxygen machine and they trip over their oxygen cord, that's one of the biggest ones that can like trip you up. And then just keeping like cables and cords out of the way. So keeping the areas that someone walks through the most just clear, and then just trying to keep your house tidy. I know it sounds super simple, and hearing someone say like clean your house for emergency responders, it does really help us a lot.
Yeah, that actually brings me to the second question, because over the break we chatted a little bit about how difficult it can be if the ingress and egress for the emergency personnel isn't clear and free. So what's some words of advice there?
The biggest ones is keep areas like doorways and hallways clear. Because when we go in, I mean, we have our stretchers that we pull in, but as amazing as our stretchers are, I mean, we can like collapse them down and we can extend them and stuff like that. They sometimes can't fit into like hallways and bedrooms that are super tight. So the biggest advice we have is keep hallways and keep doorways clear. Have enough room so we can, what we call it is a green sheet. We put people on this sheet and then we just carry them out with manpower. Keep those areas clear is the biggest one, because when we're trying to get someone out and it is a very urgent situation, having something in the way or having to kind of like move the patient or move hands and try to get them through this tight space can be very stressful. Again, we're trained on working with stressful situations, but can just make the situation a little bit harder, which we don't prefer.
Do you have an example of some of the things that you see cluttering hallways and doorways?
Absolutely. Just random stuff. I mean, household things people have. Trash bags, random furniture, chairs, clothing is a big one. People don't think clothing's a big thing, but slipping on a t-shirt, not speaking from personal experience or anything, not fun when you slip right in front of your whole crew. Just all household items. The biggest one is just like trash and things you kind of see that are not necessarily, I want to say hoarding, but just like a clutter of stuff, paperwork, mail, all the things you just kind of see that are around the house that just kind of end up in those corners and nooks.
Oh yeah, actually that reminds me that my mom tore a muscle slipping on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And
Yes.
it's those little things that you see that make that big of a difference. People think like, oh, a giant cord or this big chair or something. It's like, no, the little things that are slippery and slick.
Yeah, one of the big things we look for is area rugs. Mm-hmm. Those end up being a big trip hazard.
Yeah,
and whatnot.
absolutely.
Along with that, are there other things to help with preventative, smoke detectors or anything like that might help
Yeah, absolutely. So we always recommend that you have at least a smoke detector in every major hallway and in every bedroom and like kitchen and living room. So checking your smoke detectors. If your battery goes out, this is something we actually do for seniors a lot, is if the battery goes out and they can't reach their smoke detector, they can call us and we will change their battery. And we don't mind doing that. For us, it's a preventative thing. We'd rather have the smoke detector go off and someone get out of the house than something bigger happen and there being a bigger fire. But we will absolutely help with little things like that, and we're not going to, fault someone for not being able to reach their smoke detector and calling us to help.
So how does that work, though? Because I'm assuming I can't call 911 and say the battery on my smoke detector is bad. Can you have a firefighter come out next day? So do I call my nearest fire station, or how does that work in reality?
That is a really good question. So most dispatch systems will have a non-emergency line that you can call for any type of non-emergency. For example, if you're like, hey, there's a power line that's down or whatever, my smoke detector's battery is going off, you can call the non-emergency line and just say, hey, I'm a, 84-year-old woman. I can't reach my smoke detector. I'd really appreciate some help. And they will cat it, and they will, see what's going on in the city or what's going on in the county. And they'll say, okay, we'll dispatch, ladder 15 to your engine 63, whatever unit is available. And they'll dispatch that out to you depending on, how the emergency hours are going. Obviously, if there's something more urgent, they're going to dispatch them to something urgent and just say, we'll send someone as soon as we're free. But yeah, you can call them on an emergency line.
And I guess you could just find that on a Google search?
Absolutely. You can Google that. You can also just call dispatch. They have a phone for most dispatch centers that you can just call the dispatch center, and they can help you out through that too.
They'll just get you going.
Another thing is, if you have a fire, is like finding out a meeting place. A lot of people, they're like, okay, what happens in an emergency? It's like, well, where do you go? First off, if you have a fire in your home, you want to get out, but where are you meeting? You don't want everybody running out of 4 different sides of the house and then being like, wait, where am I going? Have a meeting place. Have it be your mailbox, neighbor's tree in their yard, somewhere where you can have a defined spot for an emergency and meet there.
That is awesome, Jackie. We've learned so much. We're already at the end of our show, sadly. I just really I'm grateful that you came in today and gave us some insights here on 911 calls and things to look out for. And for our listeners, if this was good for you to maybe think about your aging parents and things you can take care of in the hallways for emergency personnel to be able to get in and out, this might be a good idea. Again, this is the Senior Moment Show. We are sponsored by the Empowering Seniors Group. If you'd like to learn more about the Empowering Seniors, you can do so online at empoweringseniors.info or email us at empoweringseniors.cv@gmail.com, and the CV stands for Cache Valley. We're at the end of our show. We hope you tune in again next week.